The metallic clang of the cell door echoed ominously, the final punctuation to the guards' jeers as they shoved Dr. Alec Brandt inside. The room was dim, illuminated only by the faint red glow of warning lights embedded in the high ceiling. The air was thick with the acrid stench of blood and sweat. Alec, the decorated war medic and veteran of countless battles, dusted himself off and surveyed his new prison. His captors, the reptilian Kriak, had labeled him a traitor for saving not just human soldiers but also alien lives during the conflict. To them, his compassion was weakness. To Alec, it was the foundation of his humanity. "You'll be meeting TR tonight," one of the guards had sneered. "A monster deserves another." He hadn't understood their meaning until now. From the shadowy depths of the cell came a low, guttural growl that resonated through Alec's bones. He turned, his sharp green eyes locking onto two glowing orbs in the darkness. The Kriak's breathing was deep and heavy, each exhale stirring the fetid air. The beast emerged from the shadows. TR, the Draconus Maximus, the legendary prisoner. His scales shimmered like liquid metal, and his massive frame seemed too large for even this oversized cell. Razor-sharp claws clicked against the stone floor as he approached, his tail swishing with lethal grace. Alec didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his expression calm but calculating. "So," he said, his voice steady, "they've thrown me in with you. I take it you're not a fan of visitors?" TR stopped, his golden eyes narrowing. He tilted his massive head as though puzzled by Alec's lack of fear. A low rumble emanated from his chest, somewhere between curiosity and warning. "Figures," Alec muttered, sinking to the ground cross-legged, keeping his gaze fixed on the dragon. "They expect you to kill me, but I've seen enough death for one lifetime, so if you're going to do it, just get it over with." The dragon remained still, studying Alec with unnerving intensity. Minutes passed, but TR didn't strike. Instead, he let out a deep huff and lay down, his massive body curling protectively around a corner of the cell. Alec raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's unexpected." The cell was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the prison's environmental systems. Alec leaned back against the wall, his eyes never leaving TR. The dragon had closed his eyes, but Alec could tell he wasn't asleep. His ears twitched with every slight movement, his massive tail occasionally flicking with irritation. "Why don't you just eat me and be done with it?" Alec said, half to himself. "That's what they want, isn't it?" TR's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. The dragon tilted his head again, almost as if amused. His voice, deep and gravelly, filled the room for the first time. "Why would I waste my energy on you, human? I eat only those who deserve it." Alec blinked, momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected the creature to speak, much less with such eloquence. "Well," Alec said, recovering quickly, "guess I don't fit the bill. Good to know." TR let out a low growl that might have been a chuckle. "You are different. Most who are thrown to me cower, beg, or scream. You do not." "I've seen too much to be scared of what comes next," Alec replied, his voice steady, "and I've learned that appearances rarely tell the full story." The dragon's eyes narrowed, his interest piqued. "And what story do you think I have?" "Probably not one you'd want to share," Alec said, shrugging. "But I'd wager you didn't end up here because you're a mindless killer." TR regarded him silently for a long moment before rumbling, "Perhaps there's more to you than I thought." Alec leaned forward slightly, sensing a crack in the dragon's defensive exterior. "And perhaps there's more to you than the monster they make you out to be." TR's lips curled back, revealing a row of sharp teeth, though it wasn't quite a snarl. "Careful, human. Flattery won't save you." "Not flattery," Alec said. "Observation. I've made a career of seeing what others miss, and what I see is a creature who's been wronged, not a mindless beast." The dragon didn't reply, but the tension in the room shifted. For the first time, Alec felt that TR was no longer an enemy, or at least not a threat. In the silence that followed, a strange understanding began to take root between the medic and the monster. Unseen by either of them, the Kriak guards watched through a hidden camera, their amusement fading to unease. "This wasn't supposed to happen," one muttered. "What do we do now?" The answer was simple. Nothing. Yet. But the guards had made a fatal error in underestimating Alec Brandt, and the bond he was beginning to forge with the creature they called a monster. The next morning, the red light in the cell dimmed as the artificial cycle shifted. Alec woke to find Kiar pacing the length of the enclosure. Tail swishing agitatedly, the floor trembled slightly with every step. "You seem restless," Alec observed, rising to his feet. He rolled his shoulders, shaking off the stiffness from sleeping on the cold floor. "Prison life not all it's cracked up to be?" Kiar paused, his golden eyes narrowing. "Your humor is misplaced, human." "I call it a coping mechanism," Alec said, stepping closer but staying mindful of the dragon's space. His gaze swept over Kiar's massive frame, noting the faded scars that marred his iridescent scales. Some were jagged, others clean and precise, as if inflicted with surgical intent. "Those don't look like battlefield wounds." Kiar's growl rumbled low in his throat, a sound of anger and pain. "You are observant. These are the marks of captivity, the price of rebellion." "Rebellion?" Alec pressed, his curiosity overriding his caution. Kiar settled onto his haunches, his massive claws curling into the stone floor. "The Kriak used me as a weapon, a beast to terrorize their enemies. I resisted their control. I refused to destroy innocents at their command. For that, they punished me." Alec's jaw tightened. The story mirrored too many he'd heard before: the abuse of power, the exploitation of those deemed lesser. "And now they keep you here as a tool, to scare their prisoners into submission." Kiar's eyes burned with renewed fury. "Yes, they throw their condemned to me, expecting carnage. And yet, they fear me more for the mercy I sometimes show." Alec nodded, understanding dawning. "That's why you didn't attack me." The dragon inclined his head slightly. "You are different, human. You look at me not with fear, but with curiosity." Alec crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "How do you see me?" Kiar tilted his head, the faintest glimmer of amusement in his gaze. "I see a man who hides his strength behind a facade of calm. A healer who has known war." The word struck a chord in Alec, but he said nothing. Instead, he approached cautiously, his movements deliberate. "Let me see those wounds," he said, gesturing to the scars. "I can't heal the past, but I can make sure they don't hurt anymore." Kiar hesitated, then lowered himself to the ground, his massive body coiling in a way that allowed Alec access. "Do what you will, human, but tread carefully." As Alec worked, applying a salve he'd crafted from scavenged materials, he spoke quietly. "You said they used you as a weapon. That means they underestimated you, not just your strength, but your mind." Kiar rumbled, his tail twitching. "They see only what they wish to see, a monster, a beast to be controlled. But their arrogance blinds them to the truth." Alec finished treating one particularly deep scar and leaned back. "Which is?" "I am no longer their pawn," Kiar said, his voice a low growl. "And neither are you." Alec raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm not already planning my escape?" Kiar's lips curled, exposing his sharp teeth in what might have been a grin. "Good. Then we are aligned." Before Alec could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor outside the cell. The door slid open, revealing a squad of Kriak guards armed with stun batons and plasma rifles. Their leader, a towering figure clad in segmented armor, sneered at the sight before him. "Getting cozy with the beast, human?" the guard captain mocked. "Enjoy it while you can. Your execution is scheduled for tomorrow." Alec's expression didn't waver. "I'll pencil it in." The captain's sneer twisted into a scowl. "We'll see how funny you are when you're feeding the dragon." Kiar let out a low growl, rising to his full height. The guards tensed, their weapons aimed at the massive creature. But Kiar didn't attack. Instead, he glanced at Alec, a silent exchange passing between them. "Leave the food," Alec said, gesturing to the tray one of the guards carried, "and get out." The captain hesitated, then barked an order. The tray was shoved into the cell, and the door slammed shut behind the retreating guards. Alec crouched, examining the food, a mix of unappetizing rations and a vial of bright orange liquid. "What's that?" Kiar asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "Could be poison," Alec said bluntly, sniffing the vial. "Or just another way to mess with us," Kiar rumbled. "The Kriak thrive on control. They will not stop until they believe we are broken." Alec set the vial aside and stood, his expression resolute. "Then we give them a reason to regret underestimating us." The dragon's golden eyes gleamed with approval. "What do you propose, human?" "First, we survive," Alec said. "Then we fight back, together." Kiar let out a deep, resonant growl, his scales shimmering in the dim light. "Agreed. Let us remind them that monsters come in many forms." The next day, Alec and TR sat in the cell, their minds racing with ideas. The overhead lights flickered, a constant reminder of the Kriak's disregard for their prisoners was absolute. Alec's fingers tapped rhythmically against the stone floor, his thoughts sharp and calculated. "We need to turn their arrogance against them," Alec said, breaking the silence. TR's golden eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Pain," Alec said. "They've already shown us their weakness, fear. They keep you locked up because they can't control you. But what happens when the monster escapes?" Alec leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "We make a show of it. Let them see you break free, wreak havoc. While they're focused on you, I'll disable the security systems and open the other cells." "A full-scale riot," TR rumbled thoughtfully, his claws scraping against the stone. "And you believe the other prisoners will fight for us?" "They'll fight for themselves," Alec replied. "But their chaos will buy us time to reach the hangar and escape." TR tilted his head, his lips curling into what might have been a grin. "You are bold, human. I admire that." Alec smirked. "Bold doesn't mean reckless. This has to be precise. If we miss a step, they'll kill us both." The dragon shifted his massive frame, coiling with tension. "And if we succeed, then we show them what real monsters can do." That night, the Kriak guards returned, escorting Alec to the interrogation chamber, a routine they used to break prisoners. Alec allowed himself to be led, his body language relaxed despite the tension humming beneath his skin. As he walked through the corridors, Alec memorized every detail, the placement of cameras, the patrol patterns, the faint hum of the energy grid. His plan required precision, and this was his only chance to confirm it. In the cell, TR waited, his senses sharp. He could feel the unease of the guards outside, their nervous glances toward his door. The dragon's claws scraped against the floor, his tail flicking with anticipation. Hours later, Alec was thrown back into the cell, his face bruised but his eyes gleaming with determination. "Everything's in place," he muttered, wiping blood from his lip. TR rumbled approvingly. "And my role?" Alec crouched beside him, laying out a crude diagram he'd scratched into the stone. "Tomorrow, when they bring the food tray, you'll fake an outburst, roar, slam the walls, the works. They'll send reinforcements to contain you. That's when I'll disable the energy grid from their command console." TR let out a low growl. "And then?" "Then you break out," Alec said, meeting the dragon's intense gaze. "Show them what they fear most." The following day, the plan unfolded like clockwork. As the guards approached with the food tray, Kethar rose to his full height, his scales shimmering ominously. He let out a thunderous roar, shaking the very foundations of the cell. The guards froze, their fear palpable. One of them barked into a communicator, calling for reinforcements. Alec slipped into the shadows as chaos erupted. TR slammed his massive body against the walls, denting the reinforced steel. Sparks flew as the energy field flickered, struggling to contain him. The moment the reinforcements arrived, Alec acted. Using a stolen access card he'd hidden in his boot, he slipped into the control room adjacent to the cell block. The guards were too distracted to notice as Alec worked quickly, bypassing the security protocols and shutting down the energy grid. Alarms blared. The cell doors across the prison slid open. Prisoners of every species spilled into the halls, their cries of rage and freedom echoing through the corridors. Kethar, now unrestrained, lunged at the guards, his claws swiping through their ranks with deadly precision. He avoided unnecessary bloodshed, but his overwhelming presence sent the Kriak soldiers scattering. Alec rejoined Kethar in the chaos, dodging panicked guards and prisoners alike. "Hangars this way," he shouted, leading the dragon through the fray. As they approached the hangar, a squad of heavily armed Kriak soldiers blocked their path. TR let out another roar, his golden eyes blazing with fury. "Go, Alec. I'll hold them." Alec hesitated, then nodded. "Don't get yourself killed, big guy." TR smirked, a terrifying sight, and charged the soldiers, his massive form a blur of destruction. Alec sprinted to the hangar, his heart pounding as the alarms grew louder. Inside, he found a sleek, unguarded vessel, an older model, but functional. Alec powered it up, its engines roaring to life just as Kethar barreled into the hangar, his wings outstretched and his scales gleaming with victory. "Get in," Alec shouted. TR leapt onto the ship, folding his massive body into the cargo hold as Alec took the controls. The ship lifted off, its thrusters blazing as it tore through the The hangar shields flickered as the stolen vessel burst into the starry void, leaving the prison ship fading behind them. Cathar rumbled, his voice filled with satisfaction. "Your plan worked, human." Alec grinned, his hands steady on the controls. "We're not free yet, but we're getting there." With the stars stretching endlessly before them, the medic and the monster prepared for the next chapter of their escape. The stolen vessel hurtled through space, its engines screaming as Alec pushed it to its limits. Alarms blared in the cockpit. The Kriak prison ship had launched pursuit vessels, sleek, deadly, and designed to overpower escapees before they could reach the safety of neutral space. Cathar crouched in the cargo hold, his claws digging into the metal floor as the ship jolted under enemy fire. His golden eyes narrowed as he turned to Alec, his voice rumbling through the comms. "Their ships are faster. If we do nothing, they'll overtake us." "Working on it," Alec shouted, his hands flying over the controls. He threw the ship into a sudden barrel roll, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts. "Any bright ideas, big guy?" Cathar growled thoughtfully. "Head for the Uranus Nebula. Its ion storms will disrupt their tracking systems." Alec raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You know your space lanes." "I was a weapon," Cathar replied, his voice tinged with bitterness. "They trained me for more than killing." "Fair enough," Alec muttered, adjusting their course. "Hold on." The ship veered sharply, plunging into the swirling chaos of the Uranus Nebula. Vibrant clouds of ionized gas illuminated the cockpit, casting eerie colors over Alec's determined face. The pursuing Kriak vessels followed, but their systems immediately began to falter, their targeting locks breaking as interference from the nebula intensified. Cathar's deep chuckle filled the comms. "They are struggling. Good. Not out of the woods yet," Alec said, his voice tight. The ship's sensors beeped frantically, warning of an incoming Kriak dreadnought skirting the edge of the nebula. "They've got a big one waiting for us on the other side." Cathar's growl deepened. "Then we strike first." As the dreadnought loomed on the edge of the nebula, Alec and Cathar prepared for a daring move. Alec diverted power from the ship's shields to enhance its stealth capabilities, reducing their energy signature to a faint blip. "We'll use the nebula to hide," Alec explained, his hands deftly adjusting the ship's systems. "Get in close, disable their engines, and make our escape before they can react." Cathar rumbled his approval. "I trust you, human. Let's show them what a medic and a monster can do." The ship glided through the dense ion clouds, approaching the massive Kriak vessel undetected. Alec's fingers hovered over the weapons console, his breath steady despite the tension. "Almost there," he whispered, the dreadnought's bulk filling the viewport. "Just a little closer." The moment the dreadnought came into range, Alec unleashed a concentrated volley of ion torpedoes. The projectiles struck the ship's engines, sending arcs of blue lightning cascading across its hull. The dreadnought lurched, its systems flickering as the ion overload disabled its propulsion. "We've got a window," Alec said, gripping the controls. "Hang on." As the smaller Kriak vessels scrambled to respond, Cathar took action. The dragon leapt from the cargo hold into the vacuum of space, his scales shimmering with an ethereal glow. Using his immense strength and precise movements, he tore through the Kriak fighters, his claws rending their hulls with ease. Alec watched in awe, piloting the ship to keep Cathar within range. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Cathar let out a triumphant roar, his voice carrying even in the vacuum, amplified by the comm system. "This is my vengeance, and my freedom." With the dreadnought disabled and the fighters in disarray, Alec maneuvered the ship through the chaos, picking up Cathar before the Kriak forces could regroup. The dragon climbed back into the cargo hold, his body coiling with satisfaction. As they emerged from the nebula, the stars stretched endlessly before them. Alec leaned back in his seat, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We did it." Cathar rumbled in agreement, his golden eyes gleaming. "You are clever, human, and brave. And you're not as scary as they made you out to be," Alec replied with a faint smile. Cathar huffed, a sound that might have been a laugh. "Do not push your luck." Their bond, forged in the fires of escape and survival, was now stronger than ever. Together, they had defied the Kriak and proven that even the galaxy's most feared enemies could find common ground. But as the stars beckoned them forward, Alec knew their journey was far from over. Where to next? Kethar asked. His voice filled with anticipation. Alec grinned. Anywhere but here. Alec and Kethar, their fates intertwined, set their sights on a remote sector rumored to house a hidden sanctuary for those resisting the Kriak regime. A place known as Haven Reach, a refuge for outlaws, rebels, and those seeking freedom. Their adventure had only just begun. Tyranny. The journey to Haven's Reach was fraught with tension. Alec's mind churned with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would they find allies, or would their presence draw more enemies? As their stolen ship approached the sector, a massive asteroid field loomed before them, obscuring the sanctuary's location. Alec maneuvered carefully, following the faint signal of a hidden beacon. Kethar watched silently, his golden eyes scanning the void. There, Alec said, spotting a cluster of camouflaged structures embedded within the largest asteroid. The sanctuary was alive with activity, ships darting in and out, banners of various rebel factions fluttering in artificial gravity. Their arrival drew immediate attention. Fighters circled their ship, demanding identification. Alec opened a comm line. We're not your enemies. My name is Alec Brandt, and I have someone you'll want to meet. The fighters escorted them to the sanctuary's central platform. As Alec and Kethar disembarked, a crowd gathered, their expressions a mix of awe and suspicion. A tall woman with a cybernetic arm stepped forward, her presence commanding. I'm Commander Lyric, leader of Haven's Reach, she said, her voice sharp. Her gaze shifted to Kethar. You brought a Kriak beast here? You'd better have a good explanation. Kethar stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the crowd. I am no one's beast, he rumbled. I am Kethar, and I fight against the Kriak. The crowd murmured, their fear turning to intrigue. Alec stepped beside Kethar, his voice steady. The Kriak made the mistake of underestimating us. Together, we escaped their strongest prison. Now we're here to fight back. Lyric studied them, her sharp eyes narrowing. You're either the galaxy's biggest fools, or its greatest hope. Let's see which. Over the following days, Alec and Kethar integrated into the sanctuary's community, sharing their story and earning the trust of the rebels. Kethar's presence became a symbol of defiance, his strength and intelligence inspiring others to join the cause. Alec, using his skills as a medic, tended to the injured and trained others in battlefield medicine. His calm demeanor and resourcefulness quickly earned him respect. The rebels soon began planning a major strike against a Kriak supply route, a mission that could cripple enemy operations in the sector. Alec and Kethar volunteered to lead the assault, their unique bond proving invaluable in both strategy and execution. On the day of the mission, Alec stood beside Kethar, addressing the gathered rebels. We've all been hurt by the Kriak, he said, his voice carrying over the assembled fighters. They think they're untouchable. But today, we show them they're wrong. The mission unfolded with precision. Kethar, Alec riding on his back, led the charge, their combined strength and cunning overwhelming the Kriak forces. The rebels seized the supplies, delivering a crippling blow to the enemy. The victory ignited hope across Haven's Reach, solidifying Alec and Kethar as leaders in the fight for freedom. A new purpose. As the celebration erupted, Alec stood with Kethar on a high platform overlooking the sanctuary. You've changed everything, Alec said, glancing at the dragon. For them, for me. Kethar's golden eyes gleamed. And you have shown me what it means to fight for something greater than survival. Above them, the stars glittered in the vast expanse of space. Alec felt a deep sense of purpose settle within him. Together, he and Kethar had become more than just allies. They were a force that would shape the galaxy's future. Their journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. They were ready to face whatever came next, side by side.